If I had collections on my credit report right now, this is exactly what I would do to get back on track. And I'm willing to bet it's not what you expect. Collections are no joke. They're like a credit bomb that destroys your plans for that dream house, car, or even just better interest rates. But here's the thing. Most people have no idea on how to deal with them. Should you pay, dispute, ignore? If you ever wonder what the right move is, you're not alone. And today, I'm breaking it all down. And here's the thing. Sometimes not paying your collections is actually the better move. Sounds crazy, right? I'll explain why. After having run a credit repair agency, I'm going to share strategies that nobody talks about, the same ones that I use for Brian to get 2 collections removed. Before we dive into the strategies, it's important to clarify 3 terms that confuses most people: debt, charge-off, and collections. Debt is simply the money that you owe. Whether it is for a credit card, a student loan, or a mortgage, you borrow the money and you have to just pay it back with interest. Next is when you fall behind payments, usually after 6 months, it escalates into a charge-off, where the lender essentially gives up on trying to collect the debt. They write this off as a loss, often selling the debt to a collection agency. Once your debt is sold, it becomes a collection account. Collection agencies will contact you either by phone, email, or by mail, trying to get you to pay. If you don't respond, then they may just escalate the matter with legal action. Now, sometimes collection agencies don't owe the debt. They are just tasked to collect the debt on the creditor's behalf. So here's how it works in real life. Let's just say that John owes $5,000 on a credit card, but stops paying after losing his job. The credit card company eventually charges off the debt and sells it to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar. Now, that agency owns the debt. They can continue to try to collect it or even take John to court if necessary. Now that you know the difference between debt, charge-offs, and collections, you're probably wondering, what can debt collectors actually do? And more importantly, what can't they do? This is where most people trip up, and it's critical to know your rights. Dealing with debt collectors can feel overwhelming, especially if you're not sure of what they are legally to do. Some collectors might try to intimidate you by claiming to represent a law office or threaten legal action that they aren't authorized to take. These tactics were designed to create urgency and pressure you to pay. But here's the truth. Under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or the FDCPA, these practices are illegal. Knowing your rights is the first step to protecting yourself. So let's break it down. So this is what debt collectors can do. They are legally permitted to contact you by phone, mail, or email to request payment. They can provide you information about the debt, including the original creditor and the amount owed. They can also report your debt to the credit bureaus, which can hurt your credit score. And lastly, they can contact your spouse, attorney, or anyone you've authorized to speak on your behalf. Now here's what they absolutely cannot do under law: harass, threaten, or intimidate you. They can't use obscene or profane language. They can't call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They can't lie about who they are or what they can do. For example, claiming to be a government agency. They can't add fees or charges that you didn't agree to in your original debt contract. And lastly, they cannot contact you at work if you told them not to do so. So let's dive on that a little bit deeper. Debt collectors are allowed to verify your employment or wages in specific situations, like garnishment or after a lawsuit. If they are repeatedly calling you at your workplace to demand payment, they are crossing a line. And when that happens, you have the right to file a complaint or even sue them. This has happened so many times when I was in the Marines. Debt collectors would call our command, chasing down people in my battalion. Imagine the pressure of having your leadership involved. That's a violation of your rights, plain and simple. But knowing what collectors can and cannot do is only half the battle. The real challenge is understanding how collections affect your credit score and how long they will haunt your report. When debt lands into collections, it takes a serious toll on your credit. Here's what you need to know. A collection account can stay in your report for up to 7 years from the date of your last missed payment. This negative mark can drag down your credit score, making it harder to secure loans, rent apartments, or even get better insurance rates. But here's the good news. Newer credit scoring models like FICO 9 and VantageScore 4 place less emphasis on paid collections. This means paying off your collection account could help your credit, depending on the scoring model that lenders use. Unfortunately, most lenders still rely on older scoring models that don't factor in paid collections. However, newer models are starting to be adopted by credit unions and smaller issuers. Another key point is the statutes of limitations. This is the period during which debt collectors can sue you for unpaid debt. This varies by state, but usually between 4 to 10 years. For example, in California, collectors can sue for 4 years, while in Illinois, it's 10 years. Once this period passes, the debt becomes time barred, meaning that collectors can no longer take legal action. However, they may still contact you. Even if a collection account is removed from your credit report, after 7 years, you still may owe it. Since state laws vary, I recommend Googling debt statutes of limitations, your state, to find out what applies to you. Understanding how collections impact your credit is critical, but here's the burning question. What are your options when dealing with collections? There are 3 main strategies: do nothing, pay it off, or disputing the debt. So here's how to decide which one is best for your situation. So the first one is do nothing. Sometimes doing nothing might actually be your best move. Now, that's easier said than done because it doesn't stop the stress of constant calls and letters, but if the debt is nearing the end of the 7-year credit reporting period or the statutes of limitations in your state, letting it fall off your credit report or becoming time barred might make sense. However, you gotta be careful because if the debt is still within the statutes of limitations, doing nothing leaves you open to legal action, like wage garnishments or lawsuits. Now, if the statutes of limitations has expired, send a cease and desist letter to stop debt collectors from contacting you. I've created a free template in the description to help you out. The second option is to pay it off or settle. Paying off a collection can help, but it is not always necessary. There are times though when it makes sense. For instance, if you are planning to get a loan or a mortgage soon, settling a debt can improve your creditworthiness. Lenders don't like to see unpaid collections or unpaid debts, and it also counts towards your debt to income ratio. The higher your debt, the less favorable your loan's terms will be. Now, if you are considering paying, always negotiate for less. Aim to settle anywhere between 15 to 50% of the original amount. Collection agencies often buy debts for pennies on a dollar, so they will likely accept a lower amount. Now, here's a pro tip. Collectors are motivated by bonuses, especially towards the end of the month. That's why they are eager to meet their quotas, making it a perfect time to negotiate. Start with the lower offer, anywhere between 15 to 25% of the original debt, and work your way up if necessary. Remember, any discount that you negotiate is money that you don't have to pay. Now, before paying, just ensure that the agency agrees in writing to remove a collection from your credit report after you pay. Otherwise, it may just show up as a paid collection, which really isn't all that beneficial. So I always recommend getting agreements in writing and pay via check and not online. So on the memo line of the check, just include the account number and write paid in full for added protection. So once it has been paid and removed, this should boost your credit score within a few weeks. Now, the third option is to dispute the debt. If you think the debt is inaccurate, or even if you believe it isn't yours, you should definitely dispute it. So here's why. There could be inaccurate information, or the collector might not even be able to validate the debt. So to start, I would send a debt validation letter. This forces the collector to prove the debt is valid and that they are authorized to collect it. Many debts sold to collection agencies lack proper documentation. A validation letter puts the burden of proof on them and halts collection efforts while they investigate. If they can't validate the debt within 30 days, it must be removed from your credit report under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA. This step could save you years of lower credit scores and potentially having to pay the debt at all. As a shameless plug, I have created a software called Credit Rehab Pro that makes this whole process a whole lot easier. Here's how it works. Just link your 3-barrel credit report, then create the dispute letters with just a few clicks. You can even let the software mail the letters for you, so no printing or no trips to the post office. To learn more, you can scan the QR code here or click the link down in the description. We have now covered your options, but what if the situation escalates and you're served with a summons? Getting a summons from a debt collector is definitely stressful, but it is critical to act quickly and correctly. Ignoring it will only make the situation worse. So before we dive into the steps, I want to clarify that I'm not an attorney and this is not legal advice. If you are being sued, consider hiring a consumer protection attorney to help you craft your response. Many work on contingency, meaning that they only get paid if you win. Now, here's what you need to do to handle a summons. The first step is to understand it. A summons means that a debt collector is taking legal action to collect the debt. If you don't respond, they can win the case by default, which may lead to wage garnishments, which is a portion of your paycheck being deducted, and bank levies, which is funds taken directly from your account. The second step is to verify the debt. Before responding to the summons, verify the details carefully. Is the debt within the statutes of limitations? If it is time barred, the collector cannot legally sue you. Check to see if the debt is accurate. Next, is the debt even accurate? Check the amount, the creditor, and the account details for any errors. If you spot discrepancies, you can dispute the debt as part of your defense. Step 3 is to file a response. Responding to a summons is absolutely critical. If you fail to respond, the collector automatically wins the case. So here's what to do. File an answer with the court within the specific time frame, usually between 20 to 30 days. So in your response, you can either admit the debt is valid, deny the debt is valid, or claim insufficient knowledge of the debt. And step 4 is to prepare for court. If the case moves forward, gather the evidence to support your defense, such as proof that the debt is not yours or has already been paid, documentation showing that the collector violated debt collection laws, and even if the debt is valid, you can still negotiate a settlement before the court date. Now, as an important note, again, I want to reiterate, do not skip a court hearing. Even if you believe the debt is invalid, not showing up almost always results in a default judgment, even if the debts are expired or inaccurate. In the worst case scenario, if the court rules in favor of the collector, they can take steps to collect the debt, such as wage garnishment and bank levies. However, some income sources are exempt from garnishment, such as Social Security benefits or veteran benefits. So that's exactly everything on how I would handle collections. But there's something that I didn't mention earlier that can take all of this to the next level. Knowing what to do is one thing, but having access to insider tactics that I can't share here, personalized advice tailored to your situation, and a network of people who are on the same journey can be the difference between removing a collection in 72 hours versus waiting 7 years. Take Ula for example. She tried one of our strategies and removed collections from all 3 bureaus. Jonathan did the same. We've seen countless others achieve similar results. If you want results like this, scan the QR code on the screen right now or click the link down in the description to join the Credit Collective. Let's get started on your success story today.